The intellectual struggle against the British intensified after 1900, and our intelligentsia fought tooth and nail to achieve intellectual and scientific freedom.
In 1901, first Swadeshi industry was established by Acharya Prafulla Chandra with the name Bengal Chemicals and Pharmaceutical Works. And 1928, Dr. C.V. Raman came out with his great discovery. He was the first non-white person to receive Nobel Prize in the domain of science in 1930.
In this episode, we look at personalities, institutions, and the societies that shaped the scientific landscape of our country from 1900 to 1947. This was a very fertile period in the development of Western science and technology in India, from the establishment of the Science Congress in 1914 to C.V. Raman's Nobel Prize in Physics in 1930. Indians were becoming a global force to reckon with. Scientists such as Acharya Prafulla Chandra and J.C. Bose not only influenced the indigenous science movement but also had an enormous impact on the overall trajectory of the growth of our country.
Swadeshi was a yearning for an identity. Swadeshi was establishment of a particular asmita, and gradually it was this spirit of Swadeshi which led to the emergence of the call for Swaraj, that is independence, even before that home rule, autonomy. And this Swaraj gradually developed also into the demand for Suraj, good governance, which Indians could give to themselves.
This and much more on our special series on the freedom struggle and the scientific community. This period saw the embodiment of the very idea of Swadeshi in a nationalistic pursuit of science and technology. The establishment of the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore in 1907, the Banaras Hindu University in Varanasi in 1916, the Vishwabharati University in Shantiniketan in 1921 were part of this resurgence of India's educational institutions, which dated back to the great centers of learning from Nalanda to Takshila. These new institutions represented the idea of Swadeshi institutions and excelled in both Western science and Indian knowledge systems. Importantly, for the young Indians, these were platforms to think independently and fearlessly and work towards India's freedom from the colonizers. The British were not interested in promoting higher studies and scientific research in the country beyond what enabled them to rule. There was a lot of prejudice against Indians within the British government hierarchy. Indians were only given subordinate posts, and even those who had earned prestigious degrees abroad were placed in lower salary scales than their European counterparts of the same grade and rank. Indian scientists came out strongly against this discrimination. With consistent grit and perseverance, they fought against the repressive rules of the colonial government. Acharya Jagdish Chandra Bose, the first prominent Indian physicist from Bengal after returning from England, was offered a lectureship at Presidency College, Calcutta on a salary half that of his English colleagues. He refused to accept this reduced pay for 3 years. The college authorities even refused him proper research infrastructure. Acharya J.C. Bose's persistent struggle against such wide disparities in pay scales finally bore fruit. The British conceded to his demand and he was given a European pay scale in 1903.
Jagdish Chandra Basu said that nothing doing, I have established through modern scientific experiments that even life exists in non-living things. So he produced his result with the experiment that, see, there is a life even in metals also. And then he moved on to this kingdom of plants to establish that uniformity, human beings, plants and insentient or objects, and he could very well establish that, see, this uniqueness, that consciousness or life exists in every form of creation. That is what we say, Chetana Charachar Jagat Mein.
Noted chemist, industrialist and philanthropist Acharya Prafulla Chandra Ray also faced discrimination at the hands of the colonizers. After returning from England with a PhD in chemistry in 1888 from the University of Edinburgh, P.C. Ray was not offered a position for nearly 1 year, and even after that, he was only given temporary position in the teaching faculty of Presidency College in Calcutta. Acharya P.C. Ray was an extremely talented scientist and a genuine nation builder. He played a pivotal role in not only laying the foundation of modern science in India, but also leveraged his knowledge to establish large-scale native industries. He believed that Swatantrata was not possible without the full development of the country's intellectual as well as industrial resources. He started devoting himself towards the establishment and growth of native industries and founded Bengal Chemicals and Pharmaceuticals, India's first pharmaceutical company which is operational to this day. Bengal Chemicals and Pharmaceuticals started with the manufacturing of sulfuric acid. This is an essential chemical used in industries such as iron ore and steel. The company also started manufacturing Western pharmaceutical preparations as well as indigenous drugs based on Ayurveda after consulting several Kavirajas and doing research on them. Acharya Ray also helped establish many other industries like Bengal Potteries, Bengal Canning and Condiment, Bengal Enamel Works, Bengal Salt Manufacturing Company, Bengal Paper, Bengal Steam Navigation, Acharya Prafulla Chandra Cotton Mills and Khadi Pratishthan. Such enterprising efforts of Acharya also provided much needed jobs in the country. He is also credited with the establishment of the first modern and internationally acclaimed Indian Science of Chemical Research School and is commonly referred to as the father of chemical sciences in India. Acharya Ray conducted prolific chemical research on inorganic and organic compounds, particularly sulfur compounds, focusing on organic and inorganic nitrites. A particularly significant example is Acharya Ray's work on ammonium nitrite, published in 1907. According to the then existing theory, ammonium nitrite readily broke up into nitrogen gas and water with the evolution of heat, and hence its isolation was considered impossible. Acharya Ray proved this theory wrong by isolating ammonium nitrite in pure form and determining its vapor density in a vacuum without decomposition, even at 60 degrees Celsius. Later on, Acharya Ray became famous as the master of nitrites.
Acharya Prafulla Chandra Ray was a true Acharya, a great servant, a teacher with a deep social commitment. He was not an ordinary teacher, absolutely extraordinary researcher as well as a teacher. And for him, his whole life was devoted to the people whom he wanted to serve. So philanthropy was intrinsic to him. And it's not only the question of donating money or, part of his salary, whatever. Much more, his whole life was dedicated. His whole life was dedicated to the cause of upliftment of his own people, his countrymen. He served under great difficulties, yet he not only established a great department academically, but also helped industrialize the country. He established the Bengal Chemical and Pharmaceuticals.
Ironically, Acharya Ray would be honoured by the British, the Royal Society of Chemistry, for his life work with the first ever chemical landmark plaque outside Europe. In 1924, Ray and his students J.C. Ghosh and J.N. Mukherjee founded the Indian Chemical Society and started the Journal of the Indian Chemical Society. Not many people know the revolutionary side of Acharya Ray. He provided shelter and other help to revolutionaries, and it is said he also shared ideas and information on the preparation of explosives. Earlier in 1907, the Tatars contributed to the establishment of the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore with the support from the Maharaja of Mysore. The Maharaja donated 375 acres of land to establish the institute at Bangalore.
This was something like a new dawn, something like a new beginning. And this was followed by a number of scientists by the turn of the century. We are aware of the great names like Jagdish Chandra Bose, Acharya Prafulla Chandra Ray, and many others, but their students proliferated during 1920s, 30s and so. And they all established an institution of their own liking and choice. One of the pioneers in early 20th century was the Indian Science Congress, established in 1914. This was followed by Bose Institute, established by J.C. Bose in 1917. We had, even before Science Congress, Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore, established by the efforts of Jamshedji Tata and Dorabji Tata. So these were the institutions which provided the basis for growing professionalization.
Pramatha Nath Bose was a pioneering Indian geologist and paleontologist. He joined the Geological Survey of India in 1880 as a graded officer, but decided to resign from the service when he was superseded for the post of director by an Englishman, T. Holland, who was 10 years junior to him. Pramatha Bose is said to have played an instrumental role in determining the location of Tata Steel in Jamshedpur by writing to Jamshedji Tata about the rich iron ore reserves in the region. He is also said to have played a key role in establishing India's first soap factory. The British essentially used and introduced Western science to strengthen their rule in India, allowing only limited access to Indians. They continued to suppress Indians intellectually and blatantly discriminated against them in all official policies. This, however, helped in strengthening the Swadeshi sentiment, and the ground for the freedom struggle was laid. Early 20th century saw the resurgence for India's independence from colonial rule. This manifested into the Swadeshi movement and also provided impetus to the need for creating temples of education and research with special reference to science and technology, and also to the industrialization of the country. As a result, a number of Indians, intellectuals, scientists and social reformers worked to create scientific and research-based educational institutions in the country between 1900 and 1947. With the growing demand for Purna Swaraj or complete freedom, our leaders and thinkers began to prepare a blueprint for the future of the nation, including that of science, technology and economics. The aim was to create science learning and research facilities for Indians, which were free from the influence and domination of the British. New scientific societies, universities and institutions were established. The professionalization of Western science in India was taking place across many cities and towns. India also saw some exemplary efforts in this direction. It also saw the emergence of Indian scientists on the world stage, with the first Nobel Prize being awarded to C.V. Raman for physics in 1930. He was the first non-white and the first Asian to win this prestigious award. In 1904, the Association for the Advancement of Scientific and Industrial Education of Indians was formed. The primary objective was to raise funds to enable Indian students to visit Europe, America and Japan for studying science-based industries.
So today, people recognize the golden age of science in India as first 3 decades of 20th century. In 1901, first Swadeshi industry was established through science or scientific research by Acharya Prafulla Chandra Rai with the name Bengal Chemicals and Pharmaceutical Works. Then he took on a great challenge of establishing the scientific heritage or legacy of India when he published the first volume of the history of Hindu chemistry in 1902. Then Tatas established their steel industry, Swadeshi steel industry in 1907. Then Jagdish Chandra Basu established his Vigyan Mandir in 1917, and 1 year before that Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya established Kashi Hindu Vishwavidyalaya in 1916, and later on in 1924 Satyendranath Basu presented a very seminal paper in the domain of quantum physics, which advanced the horizons of quantum physics, and that is known as Bose-Einstein equation. And 1928 Dr. C.V. Raman came out with his great discovery, and he received a Nobel Prize for that discovery. He was the first non-white person to receive Nobel Prize in the domain of science in 1930.
In mathematics, the first steps to institutionalize and professionalize the subject was taken by Ashutosh Mukherjee. He was a judge at the Calcutta High Court in 1904 and later became the first Indian Vice-Chancellor of Calcutta University in 1906. He played a pivotal role in the establishment of the Calcutta Mathematical Society in 1908 and also became its first president. This society launched the Journal of Calcutta Mathematical Society in 1909. Tarak Nath Palit established the Society for the Promotion of Technical Education in 1906 and later the Bengal Technical Institute, which in 1910 became Jadavpur University. Donations from Tarak Nath Palit and Ras Bihari Ghosh were also instrumental in establishing Calcutta College of Science and Technology in 1914. The formation of the Indian Science Congress Association in 1914 was also a very important milestone in the history of modern Western science in India. In 1914, the association had 79 members, and by 1950, this number reached 2,200. In 1917, the Basu Vigyan Mandir was established by Acharya Jagdish Chandra Bose. In the same year, the institute launched its own journal called Transactions of the Bose Research Institute. Many other institutes were also set up during this period. For example, the Sheeladhar Institute of Soil Sciences in 1935-36, the Birbal Sahni Institute of Paleobotany in the 1940s, and the Indian Statistical Institute in 1936, founded by Prashanta Chandra Mahalanobis. Such initiatives gave further impetus to scientific activity in India. From 1910 to the 1930s, modern Western science rose to new heights in India. In 1924, S.N. Bose published 2 of his research papers with the help of Albert Einstein in a German-language physics journal. On this basis, the Bose-Einstein condensate was predicted, and it helped quantum physics immensely. Bose-Einstein condensate is a state of matter which is typically formed when a gas of bosons at low densities is cooled to temperatures very close to absolute zero. By the 1930s, specialist groups, schools and institutions were constituted in physics, chemistry, mathematics, biological sciences and astronomy. What is exceptional and needs to be understood, so I'm stressing it again, is that India was under an imperial yoke. The British continued to suppress India and its rich historical legacy, be it in science, mathematics, architecture, medicine, languages. The objective was transparent: to exploit India's natural resources and convert it into a market for British goods. From a historical perspective, it was also a period of extreme cruelty by the Europeans and other powers like America, where human discrimination on the basis of color, ethnicity and religion was the norm. It was in this environment that our scientific luminaries put India on the global scientific map. Among them, and a name that really needs no introduction, C.V. Raman, whose research on the scattering of light won him the Nobel Prize in 1930. C.V. Raman and M.N. Saha were the main architects of the Indian School of Physics. Similarly, extraordinary theoretical work was done by K.S. Krishnan on the electrical resistance by liquid metals. S.N. Bose's collaboration with Einstein on the study of elementary particles led to what is known as the Bose-Einstein statistics. D.N. Wadia's research in the field of geology, Birbal Sani's groundbreaking research and several discoveries in paleobotany, the contribution of P.C. Mahalanobis in statistics, and S.S. Bhatnagar in chemistry, just to name a few, set off a scientific journey that ushered in a new era of modern Western sciences in India. This also resulted in the establishment of a number of scientific institutions in the country. During this period, many Indians felt a great need to start Indian-based educational institutions to empower their countrymen. Their hard work eventually gave rise to a network of institutions and universities of higher education. These included the Banaras Hindu University, which was established by Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya in 1916, and the Vishwa Bharati Shanti Niketan by Rabindranath Tagore in 1921. Both these institutions were strongly rooted in Indian ethos and scientific temperament. Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya's vision was to blend the best of Indian education from the ancient centers of learning like Nalanda and other hallowed institutions with the best tradition of modern universities of the West. Similarly, the Osmania University was established in Hyderabad by the Nizam of Hyderabad in 1918. Along with the rise of educational institutions, the post-1900 period also saw the emergence of women scientists in India and globally as well. Some important women scientists who contributed to global scientific research were Dr. E.K. Janaki Amal, renowned botanist and plant cytologist who studied in the Presidency College and then the University of Michigan before returning to India. Professor Amal made significant contributions to genetics, evolution, cytogeography and ethnobotany. She was also the founder fellow of the Indian Academy of Sciences. Professor Ashima Chatterjee was the first woman to be awarded a doctoral degree in science in 1944 in organic chemistry from the Raja Bazar Science College campus of the University of Calcutta. Later, she would become the first General President of the Indian Science Congress. Iravati Karve earned her PhD from Berlin in Germany in 1930 in the field of socio-anthropology. She presided over the Anthropology Division of the National Science Congress in 1947. She has the distinction of being the first female anthropologist of India. Kamala Sahoni was a biochemist and was awarded a PhD from the Cambridge University in England in 1939. She retired as the First Lady Director of the Institute of Science in Mumbai. These are just a few names of women academics and scientists who worked shoulder to shoulder with their male colleagues to strengthen the scientific and technological foundations of our country, and were really symbols of women empowerment. So the Indian scientific community contributed immensely towards achieving the dream of building indigenous science movements in the country, and the aim was to build an ecosystem which could support and promote Indians in their quest for new knowledge exploration. The tumultuous period between 1900 and 1947 saw the further strengthening of our own scientific and research foundations, which not only paved the way for nation building, but also ensured that new emerging sciences and scientific establishments worked towards the larger goal of a free and self-reliant India.